Just $9.95.
Fast 56K
Lost
connection.
media.
Just $9.95.
There's something about it that is so unsettling. The thought of a disturbing TV broadcast, audio, or VHS footage being effectively lost to time, shrouding it into a realm of mystery, has always been fascinating. It seems that each and every day, so much dark and disturbing content is being remembered, with their own stories, their own significance, and their own intricate details that cements them as the darkest corners on the internet. This is disturbing lost media. On the 28th of May, 1989, a game show aired its newest episode on ITV, starring a man named Jim Bowen. It's called Bullseye, and it's a dart-based game show where three pairs of contestants compete in general knowledge questions combined with dart-throwing skills to win prizes. Among the three pairs, a man by the name of John Cooper would make an appearance. He was unremarkable, a typical contestant you could say, but reasonably good at darts. The show would run for another 30 minutes being completely mundane, and to be honest, there's nothing too special about this show. It's something you'd keep in the background and forget about. Now, that's all completely fine, and the show at this point in time would have been running for about 8 years, and there's definitely an audience for it. In fact, we wouldn't even be talking about this show today if it wasn't for the fact that by the time John Cooper's appearance would be set to air, he would be at a constant run from the police. June 29. Police are investigating a scene along the coastal path of Pembrokeshire. A vile smell is emanating from the bushes. The stench is inescapable, rapidly enveloping the surrounding area. As they approached its source, staring back at them were two disfigured bodies. A man with his hands tied up, and a woman shot dead. Immediately, the police understood the severity of the situation, opening a murder case. The victims would be identified as Peter and Gwenda Dixon. Even still, however, the killer is left for speculation, leaving no clues along the path. Having two pivotal questions: who did this? And why do this? As a result of police investigation, they would deduce that this case was initiated through a robbery, noting that the killer had received information about the couple's bank card, as he used it to withdraw money. However, the case would go cold quick, with not a single bit of evidence to back it up, aside from a police sketch based on a man who used the Dixon's bank card after their murders. This case would remain blank for a couple of years, as the killer seemed to have slipped through the authorities' grasp. It wasn't until May of 2009 where the investigators had a promising lead. It was 20 whole years after the bodies were originally found. The murders would be linked to John Cooper. The same man who had participated in ITV's Bullseye, and whilst in it, had taken the lives of innocent people. As it turns out, Cooper would be linked to two other murders, those of Richard and Helen Thompson, and also have a couple sexual assault cases under his belt. Forensics would later trace Peter Dixon's blood within Cooper's shotgun, and a pair of shorts suspected to have been owned by Peter.
We're just moving in position now.
This is the moment detectives arrested one of Britain's most cunning serial killers.
With the evidence against him, Cooper was finally convicted of his murders on May 26, 2011. Today, John Cooper is still alive, serving his life sentence. It's undeniable that this man will never again see the light of day. The crimes that he had committed throughout the decade are some of the worst in history. And the fact that he made an appearance on a light-hearted game show, smiling for cameras while simultaneously living as a killer, is profoundly unsettling. Cooper's episode still remains within ITV's archives, never to be aired because of its background. This episode to this day remains as an eerie look into the faces people put on for cameras and the public. All these years later, the lost episode of Bullseye has yet to surface. The closest we can get to seeing Cooper on this show are the clips that I've shown you throughout this segment. However, its sinister context will probably keep it under ITV's archives. A murderer hiding in plain sight. It feels like something we weren't supposed to see, but did.
Hello there, bitch. Are you comfortable right now? I doubt it. Wrists and ankles chained, gagged, probably blindfolded. You are disoriented and scared too, I would imagine. Perfectly normal under the circumstances. For a little while at least, you need to get your shit together and listen to this tape. It is very relevant to your situation.
The night is unremarkable. You enjoy the comfort of the evening. It's quiet, time to wind down, a night like any other. Your family has lived here in the small town of Elephant Butte, New Mexico. You get up to grab a snack. Yet, as you walk to the kitchen, someone is outside, and they're pleading for help. They're completely naked with a dog chain around their neck. Who is this, you ask? What in the world is happening? On November 6, 1939, a man named David Parker Ray was born in Belen, New Mexico. Being born in a dysfunctional family, his early years would be spent under an abusive household. As he grew up, however, he'd continue a difficult life, being abandoned by both his parents. He would follow a strict upbringing under his grandfather, to which a growing violent behavior would emerge. Unsurprisingly, Parker Ray began to exhibit disturbing habits. He tortured small animals like rabbits and dogs, keeping them tied up and injuring them. And on multiple occasions, being exposed to violent pornography, all of which was condoned by his father, with not a single bit of effort to put a stop to it. Needless to say, Parker Ray had a concerning childhood. However, because his actions were unchecked and behavior never nurtured, his life would only spiral further and further as the years passed. By the turn of the millennia, David Parker Ray would construct a trailer he would call the Toy Box. He wanted a private, controlled environment to where he could fulfill his sadistic sexual fantasies. He would meet his accomplice and supposed girlfriend at the time, Cindy Handy. Almost immediately, the pair were codependent, relying on each other at all times. The two would settle their toy box in the small town of Elephant Butte, New Mexico. Inside, they'd begin stockpiling restraints, chains, whips, saws, and however, alongside them was something that didn't particularly belong. It was recording equipment to possibly document his experiences.
I'm going to tell you, in detail, why you have been kidnapped, what's going to happen to you, and how long you'll be here. I don't know the details of your capture, because this tape is being created July 23rd, 1993, as a general advisory tape for all future female captives. Now you are obviously here against your will, totally helpless, you don't know where you're at, don't know what's going to happen to you. You're very scared or very pissed off. I'm sure that you've already tried to get your wrists and ankles loose, and no you can't. You probably think you're going to be raped, and you're fucking sure right about that. Our primary interest is what you've got between your legs. You'll be raped thoroughly, and repeatedly, in every hole you've got, because basically you've been snatched and brought here for us to train and use you as a sex slave. And like the rest of our animals, you will be fed and watered, kept in good physical condition, kept reasonably clean, and allowed to use the toilet when necessary. In return, you're going to be used hard, especially during the first few days when you're new and fresh.
You see, the main reason David Parker Ray would construct his toy box was to host his lifelong obsession with control, domination, and sexual fantasies. And so, for years, Parker Ray and Handy would capture inside this trailer, all the while documenting it using the recording equipment mentioned earlier. And to this day, investigators would be yet to find a single body. Parker Ray is suspected of having murdered up to 60 victims. But to this day, there's been nothing. The woman at the beginning of this section was Cynthia Vigil, one of 3 survivors. The pair would often abduct vulnerable women, often sedate and immobilize them, to which they'd be locked up in Parker Ray's dungeon, instructing their victims to be obedient and compliant. No matter what they'd do, the outcome was all the same. Their lives would be taken from them, with not a single person around to help. After Cynthia Vigil's escape, Hendy and Parker Ray's plans would ultimately go down the drain. Parker Ray would receive a 224-year sentence following an abduction and sexual torture conviction. Just a year later though, and while in custody, he would have a heart attack, effectively ending his life. Upon searching the trailer, authorities discovered everything within it. A custom-built torture table, restraints, tasers, sex toys, and a cassette tape labeled Ray's Instructions for Captives. A myriad of Polaroid photos and VHS tapes depicting the torture of their victims. To say that this scene was revolting is a complete understatement. Today, Cynthia Hendy roams free, being released from prison on the 15th of July 2019. To this day, multiple tapes from this case are partially missing and sealed away, with no hopes of ever releasing it to the public. Even still, however, the tapes that are in the authorities' grasp will never see the light of day because of the contents within them. And to be fair, it's better to keep it that way, permanently. On the 22nd of May 2009, in the city of Bradford, England, a woman is dismembered in a bathtub. She's been here for a few hours, practically drowning in her own blood. Her remains are partially eaten, and she is effectively at her wit's end. To say that this scene was grim is a criminal understatement, as the breadth of this crime simply cannot be said in writing. Needless to say, the scene that unfolded here is absolutely disturbing. By 2009, a man by the name of Stephen Griffiths would begin his studies for a PhD in homicide studies at the University of Bradford. And to be honest, it's ironic as Griffiths would have a troubled criminal past and be diagnosed with schizophrenia and psychopathy. For the past couple of years, he's gone out of his way to admit his desire about being a serial killer. This, let's say, suspicious behavior would be noted by the police. He claimed that his behavior was a complete fantasy. But is it really? Even still, Griffiths seemed to carry a remarkable lack of fear for the authorities, even when he was kept under surveillance due to suspicion of him becoming an actual serial killer. From what it seemed, Griffith's way of life was inherently mendacious, a notion only amplified through acquiring a crossbow. On the 22nd of May 2009, Griffiths would lead a woman by the name of Susan Rushworth to his apartment. for certain services. And while she was there, Stephen Griffiths would begin to murder Susan Rushworth using his crossbow. Once she was unable to fight, however, Griffiths would slowly bring her to the bathtub to slowly dismember her body, leaving some for consumption. Meanwhile, every single thing he's been doing and has done to her is being filmed by a phone he's had on hand the entire time. All of this being documented and all of it immortalized in his phone. Over the next few days, Griffiths would begin to dispose of Rushworth's body in River Air, never to be seen again. On the 26th of April 2010, Griffiths would again lead another person to his house. This time, a woman by the name of Shelley Armitage. Yet again, he would take her life with his crossbow, dismember her in the tub, and dispose of her body in River Air, all the while documenting it on his phone. Whilst on a train, Griffiths would lose his phone, the same device that had the video depicting the murder of his victims. It would later be turned over to the police for investigation. It's here where he would finally find himself on the receiving end of trouble. Despite this, Griffiths would continue finding his victims. On the 21st of May, he would lead a woman named Suzanne Blumhires under the pretense of taking photographs for an art project. At some point, Blumhires was able to make an escape before Stephen would catch up to her, tackling her to the ground and taking her life with the crossbow. Meanwhile, every single thing that had taken place that night was filmed by a CCTV camera, and all of it being documented. In a fit of rage, he exited the flat and flipped off the camera before returning to his victim, and proceeded to dismember and consume parts of her remains. By the 24th of May 2010, the building's caretaker would report the explicit footage he found on the CCTVs to the authorities, prompting a raid of his home. There, police discovered numerous traces of blood and a mobile phone containing the murder and dismemberment of Shelley Armitage. Because of their discovery, Stephen Griffiths was immediately apprehended. However, he had no intent in denying the crimes he had committed, giving himself the title, the Crossbow Cannibal. Today, he remains incarcerated in Worcestershire, England, and will for the rest of his life remain behind bars. The videos that Griffith filmed throughout his murders have never seen the light of day, considered to be too gruesome to be shown to the general public. The world is left to speculate on its content. To be fair, the context behind those media are some of the most disturbing we have discussed on this channel. Considering the extremely graphic and disturbing nature of the content within the phone and CCTV camera, it's safe to say that we will never see them out of respect for the victim's family. Nevertheless, Griffiths had created a situation that should have never happened, and because of his actions throughout the years, one of the darkest lost media cases out there was born. The sea of lost media is vast, and within them are some of the most disturbing stories within the corners of the internet. And I hope you all have enjoyed this trip with me to the darker sides of the internet. As I've said at the beginning of this video, there's no shortage of obscure disturbing lost media on the internet, and if there's any one of them you'd want me to cover, I suggest you send me an email on joltsvideosuggestions@gmail.com. To be honest with you, this video has come out a little late, and I'll probably be at an indefinite break starting today. Again, thank you all for watching until the end. Your support means the absolute world to me. I'll see you in the next one. Good night and happy Halloween.